Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to another Boiler Room Collections. This time with Joe Davis of Far.Out.Records, lifelong collector, obsessive record collector. Would you agree?
I wouldn't say I'm that obsessed, really. I mean, I don't know. I've got like a few copies of this one. I don't know if I'm that obsessed, but I am quite a serious collector, you could say. Yeah.
So, do you want to tell us where it all kind of began with you, where your love of music began?
Yeah. I mean, I had like a lot of music around me when I was growing up, because I've got a brother who's sort of 10, 12, 15 years old, 13 years older than me actually, and like he used to collect records in the 70s and stuff, so I grew up with like having singles around me since I can remember actually. And pretty much when he stopped collecting records, you know, in the early 80s, I kind of carried on, and he gave me all of his records, which was a good few. I mean, like a good 1,000 albums and lots of singles, so I kind of carried on, and he used to give me money actually to go and buy records and keep the thing up, really keep the thing going. So it was something that I've always known and always sort of been into, and predominantly soul music and all forms of black music, jazz and so forth.
So how do you want to start off?
Well,
where should we start with the music?
Well, like basically, I mean, when I first started buying and like records, the disco music scene was quite kind of predominant, and like we were buying a lot of. He also buying a lot of underground sort of soul music. So just wanted to play one of the records that I probably had in my hands for over 30 years, which is like this track by Wicked called "Can't Get Enough."
Cool. So this was towards your sort of like early DJ career and first sort of forays into the club scene at the time.
Yeah, we were playing that in school parties. That record. kind of before when probably everyone was breakdancing, we were
Yeah.
kind of playing records like that, which is a killer track.
Mm-hmm.
It's a killer tune. So I remember buying that like 30 odd years ago, more 32 years ago. So
And what kind of places were you picking up these records?
well, that in those days it was like just a local record shop, believe it or not. And like I used to go to I used to have a lot of record shops everywhere in every like town, like every village or town you can think of now used to have a record shop. So I used to buy my early sort of things there, and then I used to end up like going when I first started digging when I was about 13, 14. I used to come up to Notting Hill Gate.
Yeah.
It's not far from here, and they had like loads of second-hand record stores. And I remember used to be able to find like really good music, in their basements for like 50p. So I used to come up here on the bus from where I live and just like spend after school and spend like hours and hours digging like for records, saving up my dinner money and stuff like that to buy records. But I kind of had a really good picture of black music when I was like very young, or soul music, let's say, from American music. And I knew what to get, I knew what to buy. I had a lot of records already, and I was kind of particularly into jazz because a lot of radio stations used to play a lot of American jazz at that time. And there was like this kind of music scene in the club scene, which was especially dedicated to kind of like retrospective scenes. Like there was a scene for like funk and sort of old rare groove music or whatever, and there were scenes for like jazz music and stuff. Because a lot of people at that time, because the industry had changed into kind of this multi-conglomerate sort of industry, a lot of the focus on record labels was to make commercial hits. So, consequently, there wasn't that much. There was exciting music coming out and a lot of new techniques production-wise, but a lot of people really didn't like the music of that kind of mid-80s era. So there was it was kind of the era when I left school. So there was a lot of kind of attention on like old music, and people started to really dig deep into kind of sort of 60s and 70s music, really.
So what have you got lined up for next?
Well, basically I was going to tell you a story about like dance tracks in New York. I don't know if you know Dance Tracks. It was like a legendary record shop run by Stephen Prescott and Joe Clausel. And basically they one day I was there, and a guy said to me, like, it was about 1999 or something. He said, "Look, I've got half of Larry Levan's record collection upstairs. It's all over the place. So I've gone up this ladder and like peeked through this like this like kind of balcony, if you like, not what you call attic of the shop in New York. Yeah, it's like kind of near Bleecker Street or somewhere like that. I've gone into this loft and there's just cobwebs and dust everywhere and boxes of old records everywhere. And I just kind of pulled my hand in because I really didn't want to go in, and I just grabbed like the first thing that I could, and I got this. And I don't know what it is. It's like a version of Melting Pot. I think it is Booker T and the MGs, but it's his version. It's like this special edit of it. I'm going to come to the end of it because there's like bits of the tune, which is quite a famous tune that I've never ever heard. So like, and I'm sure probably Larry Levan or someone like that made an edit of this tune with like the original master tapes.
sticking with the 80s and the kind of club scene at the time, what other kinds of music were being played and people were digging for?
A lot of jazz, you know, well, in the scene that I was involved in was particularly sort of jazz and sort of funky jazz and like jazz fusion and stuff, because there's a big jazz dance scene at the time. So, you know, that was the scene that I was really involved with. And then I started going off to, because I didn't really have a lot of that kind of music, I used to go off digging, you know, going everywhere, like looking for records. And I pretty much spent sort of my late teenage, looking for records all over the place. So I was looking for records to buy and to play. Used to sell some to other friends of mine, to DJs and stuff. But yeah, I used to like go digging like for kind of jazz, pretty much anything really that I could play in clubs. But in those days it was hard, much harder, because you had to actually go to shops and really start digging stuff out and playing them in shops and buying them. It was like kind of a very difficult sort of process, as opposed to today you can go on the internet and sort of find everything really, but there was a lot more hassle in those days.
Alright, so let's get into another sort of example of stuff you would have been playing out back then.
Yeah, I mean, this is another really obscure 12-inch, like, so, you know, it's like, it's Louis Ramirez, who's like a Latin star. We used to play a lot of boogaloo back in the days, and get the speed right. This would be one example of the sort of things we used to play in those times.
All right, cool. So during this sort of time,
that sounds pretty crap, doesn't it? I ain't played that for about 10 years probably. Do like it. There's another one actually, another one in that series which is a bit better. But anyway, sorry. Yeah. Talking about.
Yeah. I mean, what was the next sort of step in you? I don't know, in your career or record collecting history?
Yeah, I kept sort of going in and out of like college and stuff like that, and thinking, oh god, I just really want to work in the music business. So I was kind of building up a sort of a foundation to do so. So I worked in studios and wherever, but like basically, like I really love Brazilian music, kind of, because a lot of the records that we were buying were American issued records by bands from Brazil. So I was
kind of meaning to ask you about that. So you were a fan of Brazilian music before you got yourself out there.
Yeah.
So you're just picking them up in sort of record stores over there?
No. I started in about 1986. Actually, I took like a kind of one of those courier flights and went to Brazil, and I met a guy out there, and I started like digging records in Brazil. Right. Some of which you're gonna hear later, because I got some really obscure pieces from Brazil. But I actually started going to Brazil and bringing like a lot of Brazilian music back to the UK. And like playing it in clubs as well, because there was a lot of influence in like Brazil of Brazilian and Latin music in our club scene at that time, through jazz music really. Cool.
Should we play an example of that, or do you want to talk about
no, that's okay. I was gonna play like something by like Azimuth or one of our bands, if I can find the damn thing.
Sure.
There they are. You know.
So what kind of led you to start, for those who don't know at home, Far Out is kind of known for Brazilian music specifically, and reissuing a lot of it, and working with a lot of artists.
Yeah,
Our albums.
that's what we're kind of known for. But like I say, originally I started going out there and buying records, finding like loads of like obscure records, bringing them back, selling them here. I want to play this one because it's killer. And like, you know, I started going there buying like stuff, and you know, and finding like loads of obscure kind of funk and sort of weird breaks and weird, like I was quite into the Afro music from Brazil myself, so I got deep into that, and jazz as well, Brazilian jazz, bossa nova as well. So I was kind of bringing it back, but like the scene got really big because I was doing like major compilations for like major labels, and you know, it got to that level where like we were getting asked to do compilations of like really obscure music for EMI or Polygram or whatever, Universal, and our scene got quite big with that. So the kind of word got back to Brazil and the artists, and I noticed a lot of the artists over there weren't working. So that was the whole point of like starting the label later on, and first becoming friends with them and getting to know, you know, more about their music and more about the history of Brazilian music, and then we started the label about '94. So, you know, but this is a track by Azimuth, killer. Killer.
Killer indeed, I agree.
What a fantastic piece that is.
Yeah. So Azimuth's a band you've worked with quite extensively,
Yes.
and been fortunate enough to get to know pretty well. They played Boiler Room last year.
Yeah, last June, yeah.
It was amazing to meet those guys.
Yeah, they're amazing. I mean, the pianist, Giselle, passed away, so there's a new
Yeah.
pianist in the band. But, like, I've been working with them on the label for about 20 years. And since the beginning, they've been involved in a lot of productions and stuff in the label. But, yeah, I mean, they're like... they've been like a real source of sort of inspiration and... you know, like my musical heroes, really, and it's like just incredible to be working with them, because, you know, like I say, you know, going back all those years when I was in school, I was buying their records because they had a lot of releases coming out from America.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand why they weren't recording. But when I went to Brazil, I started to first went to Brazil, I started to discover their music that they'd recorded in Brazil that never came out, and realised what kind of input they'd had into the music scene, into the MPB scene and the whole music scene in Brazil, because they'd all worked as session, as arranger, the pianist had worked as an arranger on so many things. And I discovered all this, and it was like just pretty amazing. It's just like such an amazing band, you know, such a amazing group of people.
So when you first kind of met them, they'd stopped working?
Stopped working, no, because they're doing arrangements for, Bertram was doing arrangements for, like, you know, a lot of big artists and playing here and there, but the band had actually disbanded, just because they'd worked together for so long, I suppose, and I wanted to put them back together. And it was like
forced them back together.
I forced them back together, actually. I really did, because I think they'd just done something together and started to do a few shows, but I probably came along at the right time.
Yeah,
you know, everything happens for a reason in the end. You know,
did they realise they could have a fan base outside of?
Yeah, they realised that because they toured a lot overseas in America and in Europe. They knew because of all the sort of stuff going on with their music, and you know, they had an international hit with Jazz Carnival. Right, yeah. So, you know, like they kind of knew what was going on with the whole scene. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Cool. So what we've got lined up for next?
Yeah, it's just another kind of really obscure track that I really like. It's Junior, Renato and Kiko, a bit more sort of psychedelic and breakbeat. Nice.
goes back to your kind of love of Pink Floyd, no?
Oh, don't mention Pink Floyd, please. Not again. One funny episode with Pink Floyd, but yeah, it's quite psychedelic. That one. It's quite a sought after single. I think it's been sampled by somebody, but I'm not sure whom. I've been told so. You got the cover there, please. Yeah. There you go. Just stick it down. Stick it down there.
All right. So should we get back into some more examples of Brazilian music?
Yeah, I was going to play this this record by Mauricio Maestro, who's another guy that I've been working with on the label, but I can't actually remember what tune it is. So
no,
I have to like go through it. But he's an arranger and a composer that we've been working with on the label. And we've done an album with him and Nana Vasconcelos. Is very much involved in the whole 70s sort of scene in Brazil, and it's just incredible. And this is from like a really weird 7-inch, which is kind of quite psychedelic, which is Paulinho and Claudio Guimarães with him. But he was responsible for doing a lot of arrangements for a lot of big artists like Marcus Valle and stuff like that in the 70s. It's like a pretty heavy tune by him.
Beautiful.
It's pretty mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's really psychedelic. Yeah. It's Paulinho, Mauricio, Claudio from a 7-inch. Killer.
You would not suspect that from the cover, the music on it.
Yeah. They're kind of cool dudes, man. In Brazil, the people kind of, they experimented with a lot of different. Can I pass the cover, please? Okay. They experimented with a lot of different sort of types of music and influenced a lot from West Coast jazz, from American soul music and stuff. So, rock as well, British rock. So there's a really interesting kind of music that's been made in Brazil over the last kind of sort of contemporary music, really, from the last 100 years. Some really interesting things. All
right, so what we got next?
We got this here, that's the right tune. It's like Robertinho sax and Zeca do trombone, a really good Brazilian funk. I mentioned that, I follow really the Afro music from Brazil a lot, and this is I think one of the best funk records.
Acho que na cara desse cara tem duas bocas e ouvido. Acho que na cara desse cara tem duas bocas e ouvido. Sabe como é que é? Quero ver todo músico tocando, todo mundo escutando, sem essa de julgar. Quem são vocês? Vivendo e aprendendo. Quem são vocês? Vivendo e aprendendo. Quem são vocês? Vivendo. Toca, baterista, toca pra mostrar pra ele que o músico tem que tocar. Acho que na cara desse cara tem duas bocas e um ouvido. Acho que na cara desse cara tem duas bocas e um ouvido. Sabe como é que é? Quero ver todo músico tocando, todo mundo escutando, sem essa de julgar. Quem são vocês? Vivendo e aprendendo. Quem são vocês? Vivendo e aprendendo. Quem são vocês? Vivendo. Mas esse cara é um tremendo copo de leite, hein?
Cool, so let's keep it in the sort of Afro-Brazilian
vein. Yeah.
And move on to what he got next.
Well, there's another band that I kind of worked with a bit, like João Paraíba. This is their first album, Trio Mocotó. They were Jorge Ben's backing band. I mean, these records are kind of quite... is it that track? Yeah, this band is quite kind of known, and Jorge Ben obviously is being a major part of MPB music in Brazil. But this is from one of their more sort of early obscure albums, and it's a track called Nago from Trio Mocotó, album Mutazora. Yeah, man.
All right, so although you're known for Brazilian music and introduced an awful lot of it back into the West, well, back into the UK.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the other?
Well, yeah, I mean, other stuff that I collect.
The other side of your collection that's kind of just as important to you.
Yeah, I mean, I collect everything really, like all kinds of world music, jazz, as we know, obviously been a big part of what I do, and I still collect a lot of jazz records and stuff. And for me, a lot of it is about production. I like to listen to like old records and stuff to get ideas for production and stuff for the label, because I still produce quite a lot of music as well.
Yeah.
Not in the kind of new school sense where I'm actually kind of, physically, working on computers and production. I work on a lot of old school sort of production, so I still use a lot of tape when I record my bands and stuff. So it's like an ongoing thing. You're always learning new things about production by listening to old music. And, that was like another thing kind of was so good about like listening to old records. And, I mean, I'm always like buying. I haven't like actually stopped buying. And like I was at a kind of a record fair the other day, and these caught my attention. It's like records, because it looks like kind of Arabic or something, and it's got these kind of girls that look like they could be soul singers. I thought it could be like either a kind of like a kind of, it's not the Supremes or someone like that, like a girl band, but like things like that would inspire a digger to kind of pick these up and buy them. So I got this. It's Sudanese, and it's by a guy called Mohammed. I think I don't know his exact name, because there's no actual. I done some research on this. There's no actual English writing. It's just this text, and it's Mohammed Bafti, I think. I'm not sure, from Sudan, and it's pretty mental actually. It's quite funky. I'll turn the bass up because the quality is quite low, but it's pretty heavy. It's like really funky.
توعدنا وتبخل بالصورة، توعدنا بهجتنا غنوتنا يا بهجتنا ويا مرسى عيوننا المبخورة ما نحن بطبعنا ناس طيبين غلطاتك عندنا مغفورة مغفورة في عز الصيف هفت يا روح الروح يا أمانة يا نسمة في عز الصيف هفت يا روح الروح يا أمانة إن جيت تطلبنا بضي العين ما بنقدر نحن نقول لا لا العين ما بتعلى على الحاجب وعزيز الروح ما بتعالى ولو نحن بكينا على الصورة سامح دمعتنا المعذورة لو نحن بكينا على الصورة سامح دمعتنا المعذورة ما نحن بطبعنا ناس طيبين.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff.
Yes, Mohammed Bafti, I think. I'll confirm in a minute because there is some text in the back about the writer in English.
And you were just kind of saying about the production on that, and
no, I was just saying like they had very timid kind of production facilities, if you like, and like that was probably recorded straight to vinyl, probably or to acetate, and that was done quite a lot. You know, and like in the 50s, you know, going back pre sort of 60s and backwards, you know, they had like the techniques and the engineering to cope with that, you know, but like in some of these kind of, from the lesser equipped countries, you find like a lot of the records, they have dropouts on them because they recorded live to tape and they didn't have much sort of other equipment, compressors to compress the sound, so it goes direct to vinyl from microphones virtually and whatever, however they recorded, and there's some when there's like a peak in the music and everything playing, you get like these dropouts in the vinyl, which you got quite a lot in there. It's pretty amazing. I hadn't noticed that before. You know.
So we're kind of just going through and cherry picking
here
and there from your collection. What?
I got this other thing by like Harry Moscow, and like, I think it's Harry Moscow, the Funkies, and their version of like a war track called "Slipping Into Darkness," and like they're quite an interesting band, and like a lot of his stuff's just been reissued, and I just pulled this one out because it sounded pretty good to me, you know. And it's like more funk, like, but I think it's actually recorded in Africa. This because like an African 7-inch. I'm not sure if it's been reissued. It probably has. You get everything these days.
Everyone's heard it.
When they took my friends away. You know she loves to drink whiskey. We're laughing at the moon, sleeping into darkness. Let my mind be on the dream. When I heard my mama say, what you say, what you say, what you say, what you say. When I talk to my brother, oh, pretty soon you gotta pay. Everybody right on.
1970s African music there.
Yeah, it's a version of War's Slipping Into Darkness, Lonnie Jordan and War, and it's their version. I think that's quite old actually, it's about 1973.
Yeah.
It's funky, isn't it, eh? Yeah, man, I haven't heard that for ages. It's rocking.
Doesn't it? What have you got up next?
I don't know, this band called Quartet Trebbiano we used to love, and a lot of their records. This is like a jazz sort of track, a jazz dance tune. There's a track called Voodoo Man. Voodoo Man.
It's a pretty stunning free jazz.
Wow, that's killer, man. I haven't heard that for ages. I picked that up about 10 years ago, maybe longer. It's really obscure because they were like a kind of a group, like the kind of like the Harlem Globetrotters of like jazz. I think they're from LA. No, seriously,
Yeah.
their records are really comical, and they made like loads of records in the 60s on Decca Records. There's about 8 or 9 records by them, and like they're an amazing band, like trio with a percussion, a conga player, and that's 7-inch. I kind of never really kind of knew much about it. Nobody knows much about it. I asked my friend. My friend played it to me, and he actually got it for me. My mate Tel, and like you know. Anyway, it's like pretty amazing. Like listening to that now, So I was going to play something from Italy because, like, in our travels, we've been all over the world DJing or like selling records or working for the label or touring with bands. So kind of wherever I go, I try and find records. So I've got a lot of records from Japan. Found a lot of stuff in like Italy and like really obscure places. So always like looking for, always find a record shop basically wherever you go. Yeah, wherever you go. First port of call. Do you know where the records are? So it's straight to the promoter. Is there any second-hand record shops or anything like that? I like getting really dirty, So I like, I won't just go to a record shop where there's like real kind of clean, nicely presented records. I prefer to go to the junk stores. Do you know what I mean? Because I think that's where you find stuff that no one's got. The same thing in Brazil. So I really like. Digging in the truest sense of the word, you know what I mean?
From your Dirty Troubles.
Yeah, it's Capildo's trio. It's from an album called Crossfire. I'm not sure if it's the right side actually, because I can't remember the name of the tune. But it's like kind of like a psychedelic jazz. They done a lot of library stuff, and anyway, whatever. Yeah, that's the right side.
Yeah, good start. Pretty trance-inducing.
Yeah, nothing really happens in that one. It's pretty good though.
It's good.
Yeah,
it's good.
I like that. I really like that. It's just the vibe, and it's like a nice production for its time, and it's kind of its place. Yeah. It's quite a nice quite a nice thing, Capildo's trio from Italy. Quite intriguing to have something like that from Italy. Quite a lot happens in this one though. I can guarantee you that. It's Mary Lou Williams. Do you know Mary Lou Williams?
I don't. Tell me
she's a jazz pianist. Check this out. She's been around since like the 40s and stuff. Gregorian.
Sorry?
It's like Gregorian chanting, isn't it? Or something. It's mad, isn't it?
Sort of choral.
I told you something else would happen in that one. It's mad. That's like Mary Lou Williams. She's been around like since like the 40s. I got like 10 inches. We haven't actually got to the 10 inches yet, by the way.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah, we should go through a few of those. But no, she's just been around a long time, recording her own things, recording with like different record labels and a lot of independents, doing her own music, and I don't know. She's like had a really strange career. I need to read up a bit more about her, but very spiritual.
Love story on it.
Yeah, very gospel. Yeah, there's a very interesting career behind her. I haven't really researched it as much as I should. She's like I say, I got like records from her going back so long, and a lot of her really obscure records come on these real independent labels from America. That one's from Mary Records, her own, because I know that she did have her own label. The rest of which of her records that I had been stolen by a friend of mine. I won't tell you who they are, but I wouldn't mind them back at some point, if possible. You know who you are if you're watching. You know what I mean? It's going to play this from Poland, I think.
Polish jazz.
Yeah, but I got this in Japan. There's like a Japanese issue of this album. I love this. It's like a powerhouse jazz dance tune. Called Golski.
can see you're quite eager to talk about these 10-inch jazz records you just pulled out.
Yeah. That is heavy though, by the way.
Yeah,
That is
I'm
like
loving
sick.
that.
It's Włodek Gogolski, Soundcheck. What a tune.
Polish jazz. There was quite a lot of experimentation with electronics.
Yeah.
Polish jazz, no?
Yeah, and people used to make their own synthesizers. I'm sure he did, and this guy Michael Reberniak, Ursula Derzerac, and there's loads and loads of obscure bands and stuff from Poland. I mean, you could do a whole show on that specifically, but no, about these 10 inches, I collect 10 inches, and I went through this phase of like just collecting all these like British issues of like American jazz, because like they got there's some incredible things. You can photograph them later, but
They're beautiful.
yeah, they're really nice, and there's some incredible music like on some of these, like this Chet Baker and stuff. Like you can't. There's a lot of these. I mean, there's a lot of people digging for this because this is where the history of music is, and you can't find it. You know, a lot of this sort of stuff you can't find on the internet and stuff. I mean, a lot of it's been kind of reissued, but there's so much stuff, and it kind of needs to be preserved. So
Yeah.
you know,
You were saying that the kind of UK
pressings.
pressings of these were better.
Yeah, there was like a phase. I don't know if it's still happening, but like, you know, the UK pressings of American jazz were very desirable by collectors. You know, but anoraks.
Yeah.
You know, people who really collect, like, you know, because they got better. A lot of the Prestige records, which was like a big jazz label, they had all their stuff issued in this country, and they're particularly valuable. Or Blue Note ones if they're issued in this country, because the pressings are better for some reason, and like, you know. So yeah, I was telling you about Yuri Geller. So
Yeah, to go from there, let's move on to the obvious.
Yeah, I mean,
part of the story, which is
yeah, I was just telling you that I was at this kind of flea market not long ago, and there was this woman. Oops, Serious Records going down. There was this woman, like quite you know, normal looking lady, and she goes, "I've got some records in the back of my van for sale." It was like this flea market. I said, okay, great. And she had some incredible records, mainly rock stuff, but music from all over the world. And I said, I bought this record in that, because I love these records. Like, if you look carefully, like, it's got these kind of artists from the 70s, like, with, like, the wrong spelling, like the Tramps with a double M, you know, and, like, you know, there's a couple of true artists on there. I think Van McCoy is spelt wrong as well, and the Tramps. So it's like, I took a punt on this. It's pretty good, or you can make your own judgment on that afterwards. But like, I said, "Who are these records from?" And they were like, from Yuri Geller, like his record collection. So it's pretty mad. He had some pretty tough tunes, though, I have to say. Yeah. Let me see if I can cue up the right tune, because this came from his collection. I've got to flick it on a bit. Yeah, let's have it. There we go.
Here we go, Yuri Geller's
Disco Nights.
finest disco selections. So we're just still kind of just fleeting through your collection, and it's
Yeah.
pretty broad.
Yeah, there's like so
There's a
much
lot of
music
information to
because
take in. I'm hoping that people are getting it.
yeah, that's the hardest thing because, like, you know, people always say, oh, they want to talk to you about music, but I collect so many different things from like psychedelic rock to disco. I really heavily collect disco music and like jazz, obviously, and then Brazilian music as well. I collect like 7 inches, you know, so it's like kind of, you know, I haven't got no particular
It's a real treasure trove.
Yeah, but I like all kinds of things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I like digging for new things and new music from all over the world. Do you know what I mean? I was
Sure.
going to say, there's this band. I think this has actually been reissued, you know, called the Soul Messengers. It's like
Yeah.
it's kind of a take on Earth, Wind and Fire, really, from the '70s, and it's like a band called the Soul Messengers, taken off Earth, Wind and Fire from Israel. Is what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
But that Uri Geller must have had one hell of a collection, huh?
Sure.
Yeah, it's pretty
Especially with
good.
What else was in there?
I got a few things, but I got kind of quite regular stuff. But he had some heavy tunes. Like, I got a lot of good stuff from his record collection, like 50 records. There's a lot of good music.
Lord, I'm running, trying to make a home. Lord, I'm running, trying to make a home. 99, 99, and a half, it won't do. You know it won't do. Oh, Lord, I'm running, trying to make a home. Lord, I'm running, trying to make a home. 99, 99, and a half, it won't do. You know it won't do. 'Cause I've got to keep on, keep on, keep on, just one more time. Keep on, keep on, keep on, keep on, keep on running, trying to make a home. Keep on running, trying to make a home. 'Cause 99, 99, and a half, it won't do. You know it won't do. Well, what about 50? No, it won't do. Well, what about 60? No, it won't do. Well, what about 70? You can't lay. Well, how about 80? That won't take. What you say about 90? No, it won't do. 91. I'm running for my father, 92. You see, you do. 93. Just my savior and me, 94. I'm Jordan Short, 94. I'm glad I'm alive, 96. My heart is fixed, 97. I'm on my way to heaven, 98. Don't be too late, 99. It won't do, it won't do. 99 and a half. It won't do, it won't do. 99 and a half. It won't do, it won't do. 99 and a half. It won't do, it won't do. Oh, 99, 99 and a half. It won't do. You know it won't do. 'Cause I've got to keep on, keep on, keep on. Just one more time. Keep on, keep on, keep on, keep on. If you wanna go higher, if you need a little love now, let me tell you. Higher, if you're looking for peace, understanding, come on up. Higher, if you wanna see my father, you gotta move on up. Higher, each and every day, let me tell you, you better keep on stepping. Higher, I said one more step, you better come on, yeah. Higher, 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 every day. Let me tell you, you better come on right now and go higher, higher, better come on. Just my savior and me, 94. I'm on my way to heaven, 98.
need to dig that one up myself.
Yeah, I think it's actually been reissued, but that's like an original copy. It's kind of like an Indian. It's kind of the same sort of thing that Earth, Wind and Fire had going on, where they're into like the Indian spiritualism and all this spiritualism, and then, you know, like it kind of reflected in their music. But it was, you know, it's like a pretty amazing band. But I'm sure that's around. It's the Soul Messengers, and it is an Israeli band. You know, it's not actually from anywhere else. But there are some amazing records from Israel.
Yeah.
Anyway, you know, it's like been some incredible stuff from there.
Yeah. What's your kind of viewpoint on reissuing in general and the reissue culture? I know a lot of people are quite against it, get quite annoyed about it.
Yeah, I don't really mind. I think it's quite nice that people have the opportunity to buy, you know, to buy and find like really good music. And it's just so much music that's been made and lost over the decades.
Yeah.
You know, it's quite nice that people have the opportunity to buy it. I don't really, you know, one thing about me, I don't really kind of go out and buy. Anyone can go out and buy rare records and find the best records. I tend to like dig new stuff for myself that I like and keep what I like and move on what I don't like, if you know what I mean. So, I mean, like, I think it's a good thing that, you know, the records get reissued. But there is, I mean, I have to say, and I know a lot of collectors, and I know they get really sort of annoyed with it and angry. And I suppose there is a bit something inside me which gets like a bit wound up. But I mean, to be honest, I've got so many records that it doesn't kind of bother me to be anymore.
One step ahead.
No, it's a question of a step ahead. It's like always nice, you know. The values of like the originals can go up or go down at any time anyway.
Yeah.
That doesn't even concern me. You know, it's just really about the music, and providing I've got a copy. I've got a lot of reissued records of things that I didn't have anyway, and I still kind of quite happy to have them. Yeah. You know. I wanted to play this, by Ayrton Salvanini, which is a guy who's a composer, an arranger from Sao Paulo in Brazil. There was this big vibe on like Arthur Verocai, who we actually worked with, and like there's a label called Continental, and like he was the maestro, Arthur, and like this is the maestro who in Rio de Janeiro, the maestro of the label in Sao Paulo was this guy Ayrton Salvanini, and he's got this album. I don't know, it's like really sought after at the moment, so just thought I'd play it. It's a pretty mad album.
All right, so go from there. Let's bring it right back up to present day and what the label's been up to this year. It's in its 20th year this year.
Yeah, it's just starting the 20th year anniversary now. Actually, it was on the 19th of September.
Right.
Was the actual anniversary. Is
and
that
what you
right?
did
It's
celebrate?
September now, isn't it? Yeah. So like, yeah, we're just doing like loads of we're trying to put together loads of tours for some of our bands like Joyce and Marcos Valle and Azimuth, and a couple of other artists like Nina Miranda and Sabrina Malero, Sean Khan. So we're just trying to put a series of tours together, and we're doing loads of club nights actually again at a couple of venues around London. So we're kind of like just trying to get out there again and reach out on the sort of 20th year anniversary. And no, I mean the thing's going quite well, but you know the industry is obviously quite tough, so you got to be versatile and do a lot of things. But one thing that will help is this new 12-inch, which is
Some
like
product placement in there.
no, I mean I'm sorry, I don't mean to be
no.
like, it's a bit cheesy, but
I'm
this
eager to
is
hear it.
yeah, I got this new thing coming out by like Theo, you know, Theo Parrish, and he's like been working with us on a few little remixes and stuff. And as another artist that's been going really well now, again suddenly having a big revival is Marcos Valle. So it's like a remix of Marcos Valle by Theo. So it's pretty mad. White label pressure.
All right, so that just about brings us to the end of the show. Thanks a lot for sharing all that stuff with us.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, a lot of information to take in.
Yeah, I think I need to have a coffee or something. I've got a bit of a headache myself.
Yeah.
No, but thank you, man.
No, thank you. And thanks to everyone that's locked in online. We'll be back with another collection soon. Peace.
Cheers.